Revenge with Karen.
You know that feeling when you walk into a room and the air conditioning is humming just right? You don't notice it. You don't think it. You just exist in comfort, oblivious to the compressor working its ass off outside in the heat, vibrating until its bolts rattle. That's me. I'm the AC unit of Kessler Tech. I'm the invisible machinery that stops this billion-dollar dumpster fire from overheating and melting down into a puddle of lawsuits and culturally offensive hand gestures. My official title is International Liaison and Cultural Protocol Expert. It sounds fancy, doesn't it? It sounds like I wear silk scarves and drink champagne in business class. In reality, it means I'm a glorified babysitter for grown men with seven-figure salaries who think Kanishiwa is a type of sushi. I've been here 10 years. 10 years of cleaning up messes before they happen. 10 years of ensuring that when our CEO, David, shakes hands with a foreign dignitary, he doesn't accidentally insult the man's ancestors by using the wrong grip strength. Today was the beginning of the end, though I didn't know it yet. We were prepping for the Kyoto consortium. This wasn't just a deal, this was the deal. $300 million. The kind of money that buys a lot of silence and a lot of golden parachutes. Kyoto isn't just a company, they are a dynasty. They are old money, Kyoto money. The kind of people who view a contract not as a piece of paper, but as a blood oath. I was in the main boardroom at 6:00 a.m. The cleaners were still dragging their vacuums around the carpet, looking at me like I was a ghost. Probably looked like one. I hadn't slept properly in 3 days because I was too busy rewriting the itinerary that our strategy team had put together. They wanted to take a group of 70-year-old traditionalist Japanese executives to a steakhouse that serves meat on a shovel. I wish I was joking. I stood at the head of the mahogany table, measuring the distance between the chair placement and the table edge with a ruler. 2 inches. Precision matters. In Japan, space is a language. If you seat the chairman too close to the door, you're telling him he's disposable. If you seat the junior associate in the power spot, you're telling the chairman he's irrelevant. I was moving the water glasses, checking for smudges. I held one up to the light, squinting. A fingerprint, disgusting. I pulled a microfiber cloth from my blazer pocket and wiped it down until it screamed with cleanliness. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I checked it. Notification from Reddit. Look, I spend a lot of time lurking on these subs, reading about other people's workplace disasters to make myself feel better. It's cheaper than therapy. Speaking of which, if you guys are actually reading this and enjoying my descent into corporate madness, do me a solid and hit that subscribe button and drop a like. It's the only dopamine hit I'm gonna get today, considering my boss is about to crush my soul. Seriously, 95% of you just lurk like ninjas. Show yourself. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and looked at the seating chart again. I had spent weeks coordinating with the Kyoto advance team. I knew their dietary restrictions, their preferred tea blends, Shizuoka Sencha, not the dust we keep in the break room, and the fact that Chairman Tanaka had a bad left hip, meaning he needed a chair with specific lumbar support. I had that chair brought in from my own office. David, our CEO, walked in at 7:00 a.m. He looked like he'd been groomed by a wind tunnel, slick, polished, and entirely hollow. "Mika," he said, not looking at me, but at his reflection in the window. "Place looks good. Clean." "It's correct, David," I said, my voice flat. The seating arrangement is hierarchical based on the 1868 Meiji Restoration Protocols, adapted for modern corporate governance, just as Chairman Tanaka prefers. Right. Meiji whatever, David waved a hand, dismissing 300 years of history. "Listen, we've got a new player joining us today. Chad, new VP of Strategy. He's going to be shadowing the deal." My stomach dropped. "Shadowing?" I asked, keeping my face perfectly still. I had practiced this face in the mirror for a decade. It's the face of a statue that wants to murder a pigeon. "Well, leading." Actually, David corrected himself, finally turning to me. "He's got an MBA from Wharton, Mika. Sharp kid. Did a semester abroad in Thailand, I think, or Taiwan, somewhere Asian. He knows the vibe." I felt a vein in my forehead throb. Somewhere Asian. Thailand and Japan are about as culturally similar as a monster truck rally and high tea at Buckingham Palace. "But sure, David, let's bring in the sharp kid." "The Kyoto relationship is fragile," I said, my voice dropping an octave. "Chairman Tanaka does not do business with sharp kids. He does business with established trust. We have spent 5 years building this bridge, and Chad is going to drive a Ferrari across it, David grinned, flashing teeth that cost more than my car. Relax, Mika. You're great at the details, the tea and the bowing and the napkins. Let Chad handle the heavy lifting. He's got the energy. I looked down at the table. The perfect alignment of the pens, specific grade of paper I had ordered for the agendas because I knew Tanaka-san appreciated tactile quality. The details are the heavy lifting, I whispered, but David was already checking his watch. Coffee? He asked. I need a double, big day. He walked out, leaving me alone in the silent boardroom. I looked at the empty chair at the head of the table, the one I had prepared for Tanaka. Then I looked at the chair next to it, the one for our lead negotiator. I had prepped those notes. I had translated every nuance. And now, some guy named Chad was going to sit there. My phone buzzed again, an email. I saw the sender and felt a cold chill mixed with a strange warmth. It was from the personal account of Chairman Tanaka's executive assistant, likely dictated by the old man himself. It was in Japanese, of course. Subject: regarding our visit. Adi Tanaka-sama asks if the seasonal azaleas are blooming in the courtyard yet. He looks forward to your guidance, Mika-san. He says the noise of the world is loud, but he trusts your silence. I closed my eyes. They weren't coming for the technology. They weren't coming for David. They were coming because I had convinced them that this company had a soul. And in about 2 hours, a guy named Chad was going to prove me a liar. I walked over to the sidebar and poured myself a cup of the cheap breakroom coffee. It tasted like burnt rubber and despair. I took a sip and let the bitterness sit on my tongue. All right, Chad, I said to the empty room. Let's see what you've got. If arrogance had a smell, it would be sandalwood beard oil and whatever Chad was marinating in. He didn't walk into the briefing room, he breached it, swung the door open with the confidence of a man who has never been told no in his entire life, nor please stop talking, nor that zipper is down. He was 30-something, wearing a suit that was too blue and too tight, exposing ankles that were entirely too hairless. He had that haircut, you know the one, shaved on the sides, long on top, like a cockatoo that works in finance. He was holding a venti Starbucks cup like it was a scepter. So, he boomed, voice echoing off the glass walls. This is the squad. There was no squad. It was just me, David, and the CFO shivering in the corner. Chad, David said, beaming like a proud dad. This is Mika. She's our liaison. Chad turned to me. He looked me up and down, not sexually, but appraisingly, like he was checking the mileage on a used Honda. Liaison, he repeated, testing the word. Cool, cool. So, you're the translator? I'm the cultural protocol officer. I corrected, keeping my voice level. I manage the relationship infrastructure. Right, translator. Awesome, Chad said, dropping his bag on the table, directly on top of the dossier I had spent 3 nights compiling. Look, Mike, can I call you Mike? Mika sounds a little anime, you know, I blinked. My name is Mika, it's Japanese. It means beautiful fragrance or new moon depending on the kanji used. It is not anime, got it. Mika. Whatever, he laughed. Sharp, barking sound. So, here's the game plan, guys. I've been looking at this Keijiro thing. It's too slow, way too slow. We've been dating these guys for 5 years. Time to bang, am I right? The CFO coughed. David chuckled nervously. I felt my soul leave my body and float up to the ceiling tiles to die. They are a traditional Kyoto consortium, I said, trying to keep the rage from leaking out of my eyes. They move at the speed of trust. If you push them, will evaporate. Nah, Chad waved a hand, dismissing centuries of Japanese business etiquette. That's old school. The world is flat, baby. Everyone wants the same thing: money, growth, disruption. I whipped up a new MOU last night. He pulled a stack of papers out of his bag. They were stapled. Crookedly. Chad, I said, stepping forward. The Memorandum of Understanding has already been translated and vetted by legal. It's formatted in the specific Keijiro style. Printed it on A4 bond paper because they find US letter size unprofessional. Yeah, I read that, Chad said, tossing his papers onto the table. Boring, too many words. I slimmed it down. Bullet points, power words, synergy, vertical integration, domination. And I kept it in English. The room went silent. English? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. English is the language of money, sweetheart, Chad winked. If they want our tech, they can read our language. It's a power move, shows dominance. Establish the alpha position early, right, David? David nodded, though he looked a little unsure. Well, Chad has a point about efficiency. It's an insult, I said, cutting David off. It tells them we don't care enough to meet them halfway. Chairman Tanaka speaks English, yes, but he negotiates in Japanese because it allows him to think. If you hand him an English contract, he will hand it back. Chad stepped into my personal space. Smelled like mint gum and hostility. Listen, Mika, you're great at the bowing stuff. I've seen the emails. You're very polite, but this is the big leagues. We aren't here to make friends, we're here to acquire assets. You handle the tea, I'll handle the sharks. Okay, he turned his back on me before I could answer. David, check this out. I added a clause about exclusivity that's going to blow their minds. I stood there, staring at the back of his blue suit jacket, could see the tension in the seams. I looked at my beautiful, perfect dossiers buried under his trash. I had a choice right then. I could fight. I could scream. I could throw my hot coffee in his face and explain that synergy isn't a strategy, it's a buzzword for idiots. But then I remembered the email from Tanaka's assistant. He trusts your silence. If I fought Chad now, David would fire me for being emotional or difficult. I would be escorted out of the building. The deal would collapse anyway, but if I stayed, if I let Chad drive this car off the cliff, maybe, just maybe, I could be the one to pull the survivors from the wreckage. Okay, I said softly. Chad didn't turn around. Good girl. Now get me a charger for my MacBook. This room has terrible outlets. I walked out of the room. I didn't go to get a charger. I went to my desk. I opened my encrypted email client, the one I used for sensitive comms. I drafted a message to my contact on the Keijiro advance team. To Saito-san from Mika subject, weather update, there is a storm coming. The wind has changed direction. Please advise Chairman Tanaka to bring his umbrella. I will be present, but I will not be steering the ship. I hit send. Then I sat back and watched the blinking cursor. Chad wanted to be the alpha? Fine. He was about to find out that in the jungle, alpha is just the one who makes the loudest noise before the tiger eats him. And Chairman Tanaka, he was the tiger. I picked up my pen and started taking notes. Date, today. Time, 08:30. Incident, Chad signs his own death warrant. This was going to be a long day. The arrival of the Keijiro delegation was like watching a ballet performed in a minefield. They arrived at exactly 9:55 a.m. for a 10 o'clock a.m. meeting. In Japan, on time is late. Being 5 minutes early is on time. Being 10 minutes early is rude. They nailed the 5-minute window with military precision. The elevator doors slid open, and there they were. 6 men in dark, impeccably tailored charcoal suits. They moved as a single organism, a phalanx of corporate dignity. Chairman Tanaka was in the center, a man of 70 with hair like silver wire and eyes that had seen companies rise and fall like tides, leaned slightly on a cane made of polished cherry wood. I stepped forward, my hands clasped in front of me, bowing to the precise 45-degree angle required for a chairman of his status. My breathing was regulated. I was ready to welcome them to bridge the gap. Tanaka-sama, I began, my voice soft but projected. Yoku arashimashita? Hey, welcome to the state, boys. Chad bulldozed past me. He actually physically nudged me aside with his shoulder, marched right up to Chairman Tanaka, a man who is considered a living national treasure in Kyoto business circles, and extended his hand for a shake. I'm Chad, new VP. Heard a lot about you, Tony. The silence that followed was so loud it hurt my teeth. Tony. He called Chairman Tanaka Tony. The chairman stared at Chad's hand like it was a dead fish offered to him on a plate. He didn't move. His face was a mask of polite, terrifying nothingness. Behind him, their 5 delegates stiffened. I saw Saito-san, the chairman's right hand, twitch. His jaw tightened so hard I thought a molar might crack. Chad didn't retract his hand. He just kept it there, pumping it in the air slightly, grinning. Tony, Tanaka, that's what we call a nickname here. Icebreaker, I stepped in. I had to. I slid seamlessly between Chad's outstretched arm and the chairman, angling my body so I wasn't technically interrupting, but shielding. Chairman Tanaka, I said in rapid, formal Japanese. Please forgive the enthusiasm of our new executive. He is young and unrefined. His spirit is high, but his manners are raw. Please do not let the shadow fall upon our welcome. Tanaka's eyes shifted to me. For a second, the mask slipped. There was warmth there and pity. He bowed his head slightly to me, a microscopic movement that spoke volumes. It is good to see you, Mika-san, he replied in Japanese. Wind is indeed strong today. Then he turned to Chad and switched to English, heavily accented but precise. Mr. Chad, thank you. He did not shake the hand. He simply walked past Chad toward the boardroom. Chad turned to me, whispering loudly, See, he speaks English, told you. You just gotta assert dominance, he respects me now. He thinks you are a barbarian, I whispered back, staring straight ahead. Nah, he's intimidated. That's the look of a man who knows he's about to get acquired. We filed into the boardroom. I went to the coffee station to ensure the tea was ready. I watched as Chad sat down. He didn't wait for the chairman to sit. He just plopped into his chair, the one at the head of the table. My blood ran cold. He had taken the chairman's seat. The delegation froze. They stood around the table, looking at the empty chair next to Chad, the subordinate chair, then at Chad sitting in the seat of honor. Take a load off, guys, Chad gestured. Sit, we're all family here. Saito-sen looked at me. His eyes were pleading. Do something. I couldn't physically pull Chad out of the chair. It would cause a scene that would end the negotiation instantly. So I did the only thing I could do to save face for the guests. I moved the chairman's nameplate to the subordinate seat. I effectively demoted the seat itself. I bowed to Tanaka and gestured to it. Please, I said in Japanese. The seat of honor is wherever you sit. Tanaka smiled, a thin, razor-sharp expression. He sat in the side chair. The rest of his team sat. Chad looked confused. Hey, Mika, why'd you move the card? Whatever. He clapped his hands. All right, let's skip the boring stuff. No need for the history lesson, right? Let's talk numbers. He opened his folder. He pulled out his single page, bullet-pointed English agenda. He slid it across the table to Tanaka. 300 mil, Chad said, leaning back and putting his arm over the empty chair next to him. Take it or leave it, but let me tell you why you're going to take it. I was standing against the wall, notebook in hand. I saw Saito-sen lean over to the man next to him, the legal counsel, I think. He whispered in Japanese, his hand covering his mouth, but I read his lips perfectly. She warned us this might happen. The legal counsel nodded, his eyes flicking to me for a fraction of a second. Then we wait. Let the monkey dance. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. Shame, yes, but also vindication. They weren't leaving yet. They were staying to watch the show. And they knew exactly who the ringmaster was and who the clown was. Chad was currently explaining to the chairman of the Keijiro Consortium that their supply chain was bloated. Got too many middlemen, Tony, Chad said, pointing a finger at the chairman. We're going to trim the fat. I uncapped my pen. Note, 10:15 a.m. Chad calls the chairman's family employees fat. Integration probability dropping to 0%. Hostility rising to tactical levels. I took a sip of my cold coffee. It tasted like gasoline. I needed it. The restaurant Chad chose was called the Beef Barn. I am not making this up. It's sawdust on the floor and neon signs that said things like EAT meat or go home. It's authentic Americana, Chad had insisted. They need the full experience. The full experience apparently involved a waitress named Brandy, who was wearing a gingham shirt tied above her navel and shouting the specials over the sound of country music. The Keijiro delegation sat in the wooden booth, looking like a group of aristocratic penguins stranded at a rodeo. They were polite. God, they were so polite. They folded their hands in their laps and smiled their terrifyingly neutral smiles. Round of beers. Chad yelled, and get us some of those. What are they called? The spicy balls, the jalapeno poppers. We have prepared a selection of wines, I interjected softly. And perhaps some sparkling water? Nah, beer. Cold American lagers. Drink up, boys. Chad slammed his hand on the table. Chairman Tanaka stared at the condensation dripping down the glass mug Brandy had slammed in front of him. He didn't touch it. So, Chad said, his mouth already full of a jalapeno popper, cheese oozing onto his chin. Let's talk about the restructuring. I'm thinking we gut the Kyoto R&D division. Move it all to the neighboring state. Cheaper rent, right? I froze. The Kyoto R&D division wasn't just a department. It was the heart of Keijiro. It was where Tanaka's father had started the company. It was sacred ground. Saito-sen spoke up, his English halting. Mr. Chad, the Kyoto laboratory is historical. It is the spirit of our innovation. Spirit doesn't pay the bills, Saito, Chad laughed. Spirit is overhead. We need lean, we need agile, we need to cut the dead wood. Dead wood. He just called their ancestors dead wood. I signaled the waitress. I didn't speak, just caught her eye and made a subtle motion. She came over. Please bring the chairman a hot tea, I whispered, pressing a $20 bill into her hand. And a clean napkin. Sure thing, honey, she said loudly. Chad looked at me. Stop mothering them, Mika, they're big boys. Hey, Tony, you ever do a sake bomb? No, Tanaka said. Oh, you're gonna love this. Brandy, bring me a bottle of sake and 6 shot glasses. And 6 half pints of beer. We do not have sake. Brandy said, we have tequila. Close enough. Tequila bombs. I watched in horror as Chad lined up shots of Jose Cuervo balanced on chopsticks over glasses of Bud Light. When I pound the table, the shot falls in, and you chug, Chad explained, his face flushed with alcohol and stupidity. 1, 2, 3, sake bomb, he slammed the table. His shot fell in. He chugged it, foam dripping down his shirt. None of the Japanese delegates moved. Their shots remained balanced, they just watched him. Chad finished, wiped his mouth, and belched. Woo, that's how we do business. Come on, Tony, don't leave me hanging. Tanaka looked at the tequila, then he looked at Chad. I have a stomach condition, Tanaka lied smoothly. My doctor forbids it. Suit yourself, more for me. Chad reached for Tanaka's glass. Under the table, I felt a gentle tap on my knee. I jumped slightly. It was Sato-san. He wasn't looking at me. He was staring straight ahead at Chad. But his hand slid across the bench seat. He pressed a small, heavy card into my palm. I slipped it into my pocket without looking. I knew what it was. It wasn't his business card. I already had that. I excused myself to the restroom. Once inside the stall, amidst the graffiti and the smell of bleach, I looked at the card. It was a personal calling card. On the back, handwritten in elegant ink, room 412. Omni Hotel? Midnight, come alone, we must speak of the future. I stared at the ink. This was it, the back channel. Back at the table, David was laughing at one of Chad's jokes. David, the CEO, the man who was supposed to be the adult in the room, was drunk on Chad's confidence. He thought this was going well. He thought the silence was submission. Look at them, David whispered to me when I returned, eating out of his hand. I looked at the delegation. They weren't eating. Were waiting. They were predators observing a wounded animal, waiting for it to bleed out completely before they made their move. They aren't eating, David, I said. They are fasting. Same thing, David slurred. I sat back down. Chad was now explaining to the legal counsel why American women are more fun than Japanese women. I closed my eyes and counted to 10. Then I counted to 1,000. Midnight. Room 412. Had a few hours to decide if I was going to save the company or burn it down. The next morning, the office felt like the inside of a pressure cooker. Chad was buzzing, literally buzzing. He was vibrating with caffeine and the delusion of impending victory. Today's the day, Mika, he yelled as he passed my desk. Closing time, Glengarry Glen Ross style. The schedule says the closing isn't until Friday, I said, not looking up from my monitor. Today is Wednesday. Today is the factory tour and the cultural exchange lunch. Cancelled Chad said, popping a piece of gum. Boring. Who wants to look at conveyor belts? I moved the boardroom pitch to 2:00 p.m. We lock this down today. I got a flight to Vegas tonight. Celebration, baby. I stood up slowly. You canceled the factory tour? Tanaka-san is an engineer. He started on the factory line. The tour is the only part he actually cares about. Wants to see the welding robots. He can watch a YouTube video. We're pitching the deal. Hard close. He walked away. I went straight to David's office. I didn't knock. David was nursing a hangover, staring at a bottle of vitamin water like it was the holy grail. David, I said, you have to stop him. Stop who, Chad? David rubbed his temples. Why, he's crushing it. Did you see them at dinner? They were speechless. They were horrified, David. Were silent because they were calculating how much it would cost to buy our competitors instead of us. If Chad forces a vote today, they will walk. David sighed and swiveled his chair to face the window. You're too close to this, Mika. You're emotionally attached to the protocol. Chad is a disruptor. Investors love disruptors. The stock is up 2% just on the rumor of his involvement. He called the chairman Tony, I said, my voice trembling with suppressed rage. Canceled the factory tour. He is insulting them every time he opens his mouth. Mika, David said, his voice hardening. Chad is the VP. You are the liaison. Your job is to translate what he says, not to edit it. If you can't get on board, maybe you shouldn't be in the room. There it was. The threat. I looked at David, a man I had saved from a dozen international incidents, a man whose reputation I had polished for a decade, was throwing me away for a haircut and a buzzword. Understood, I said. I'll be in the room to translate. I walked out. I went back to my desk. I opened the file I had been working on in secret, the real proposal. The one that respected the Keijiro lineage, that protected the Kyoto jobs, that outlined a partnership of equals rather than a hostile takeover. It was beautiful. It was written in flawless formal Japanese. It was formatted on A4. I saved it to a USB drive. A plain, black USB drive. I put it in my blazer pocket. Then I opened my email and sent a message to the company archivist. an automated system that logs all internal documents for legal compliance. I attached the real proposal with a timestamp. Subject: Kyoto Partnership Proposal Alternative Draft B status, archived for record. If the ship went down, black box would record that someone had known how to fly it. I checked the time, 1:45 p.m. I went to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. I looked in the mirror. I didn't look like a liaison anymore. I looked like an assassin. My phone buzzed, a text from Sato-san. We are in the lobby. The chairman is asking for you. I took a deep breath. Showtime, I whispered. I walked to the elevator to meet them. When the doors opened, the delegation was there. Looked grim, the air around them was heavy. Chairman Tanaka looked at me. He didn't smile. Mika-san, he said, is it true? The tour is canceled. Yes, Chairman, I said, bowing low. Mr. Chad believes the boardroom is more efficient. Tanaka let out a short, dry laugh. Efficient. A word used by men who do not know how to build things, only how to sell them. He stepped closer to me. We will hear him out of respect for your CEO. But patience has a limit, and my limit is reached. I understand, I said. I led them to the boardroom. As we walked, I felt like I was leading a firing squad to their positions. The only question was, who was going to get shot? The hallway leading to the boardroom is lined with glass awards cases. Innovator of the Year, Best Place to Work 2018. They looked like tombstones today. Chad was already in the room, pacing like a caged tiger. He had a PowerPoint up on the screen. The first slide said dominance in red, all caps, impact font. There was a picture of a lion eating something. It was hard to tell. I stopped outside the door. Sato-san lingered back while the rest of the delegation filed in. Mika-san, he murmured. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at a fire extinguisher on the wall. Last night, you did not come to the hotel. I could not, I replied, my voice barely audible. It would have been improper. I am an employee of Kessler Tech. Loyalty, Sato nodded. A rare virtue here, it seems. He turned to face me. Why are you letting him lead? You know this path ends in a cliff. I was told not to interfere, I said. I was told I am just the translator. Sato's eyes narrowed. A katana is just a piece of metal until it is drawn. Do not forget you are sharp, Mika-san, even if they use you as a butter knife. He bowed deeply, deeper than a superior usually bows to a subordinate. We will see what happens when the metal hits the bone. He walked into the room. I stood there for a second, my hand clutching the USB drive in my pocket. When the metal hits the bone, I walked in. The atmosphere in the room was toxic. David sat at the far end, looking nervous. Chad stood at the head, clicker in hand. All right, gentlemen, Chad clapped. Let's get this show on the road. No translators needed for the graphics. Pictures are universal. He clicked the remote. The slide changed to a graph with an arrow pointing straight up. The axis wasn't labeled, it just said growth. This is us, Chad said. We are the rocket, you guys. He clicked again. A picture of a bonsai tree. You guys are the garden, beautiful, but slow. We want to put a rocket engine on your garden. I saw the legal counsel for Keijiro take off his glasses and rub the bridge of his nose. Mr. Chad, counsel said in perfect English. Are you suggesting you wish to launch our garden, metaphorically? Yes, Chad pumped his fist. We take your legacy tech, strip it down, rebrand it as Keijiro X and sell it to the military. Boom, billions, silence, absolute dead silence. Keijiro was a pacifist company. It was written in their charter. They never sold to the military. Ever. It was the one unbreakable rule set by the founder after WW2. I didn't know because he hadn't read my dossier. I looked at David. He was smiling blankly. He didn't know either. Chairman Tanaka stood up slowly. His joints popped in the quiet room. Military? Tanaka asked softly. Hell yeah, Chad grinned. Defense contracts are where the real juice is. We got contacts at the Pentagon. They're drooling over your optics tech. Tanaka looked at me. His eyes were cold, hard flint. Mika-san, he said in Japanese. Did you tell him? I wrote it in the briefing, Chairman. I replied in Japanese. Page 4, paragraph 1. The pacifist clause. He did not read it. Speak English, Chad snapped. No secret codes. Tanaka turned to Chad. You wish to weaponize my father's life work. I wish to monetize it, Tony. Don't get sentimental. It's just glass and sensors. Just glass and sensors. That was the sound of the bridge collapsing. Tanaka didn't shout. He didn't get angry, just reached for his briefcase. We are finished here, Tanaka said. Whoa, hold on. Chad stepped forward, blocking Tanaka's path. You can't just walk out. We have a verbal agreement. We have nothing, Tanaka said. Move, David. Chad yelled, tell him he's making a mistake. David stood up, looking panicked. Mr. Tanaka, please, let's sit down. Chad is just brainstorming. I am not brainstorming, Chad yelled. I'm telling you how the world works. Need us, you're dying dinosaurs, and we are the meteor. And then he did it. He turned to me. Mika, tell them they're being idiots. I stood still. Don't just stand there, Chad screamed, his face red. Do your job, you're just a secretary. Translate. Tell them to sit the hell down, you're just a secretary. The room froze. Even the air conditioning seemed to stop. Tanaka stopped moving. He looked at Chad. Then he looked at me. The Kyoto delegation waited. If it waited, Chad panted. I felt the USB drive burning a hole in my pocket. I looked at Chad. I looked at his cheap suit, his arrogant haircut, his complete and utter lack of soul. No, I said. Chad blinked. What? I am not a secretary, I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it carried. And I will not translate that. You're fired, Chad screamed. Get out. Get security. I don't think so, I said. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the USB drive. I walked over to the laptop controlling the projector. I pulled Chad's dongle out. The dominance slide vanished. I plugged my drive in. What are you doing? David asked, his voice trembling. I am doing my job, David, I said. I am fixing the protocol. I opened the file. The screen filled with elegant, vertical Japanese script. The title, Proposal for Mutual Prosperity Partnership. I turned to Chairman Tanaka. And I switched. I didn't just speak Japanese. I spoke Kyoto. For those of you who don't know, Kyoto dialect isn't just an accent. It's a completely different operating system. It's softer, more indirect, more poetic, and infinitely more aristocratic than standard Tokyo Japanese. It's the language of geishas, old tea houses, and families that have been powerful for 500 years. It signals that you aren't just fluent, you are of the culture. I looked directly at Chairman Tanaka, ignoring Chad completely. My posture shifted. I softened my shoulders, clasped my hands, and lowered my gaze slightly, not in submission, but in the specific deference of a host to an honored guest. Tanaka-sama, I began, the vowels long and musical. Please forgive the noise of the uneducated. The wind blows loudly through empty bamboo stalks. The effect was instantaneous. The legal counsel dropped his pen. Saito-san's mouth opened slightly. Chairman Tanaka's eyes widened, looked at me as if I had just transformed into a mythical creature. You, Tanaka whispered, you speak the old tongue? My grandmother was born in Jin, I replied, keeping the rhythm perfect. She taught me that business is like tea, it cannot be rushed with boiling water or it becomes bitter. It must be steeped with patience. Chad looked around frantically. What is she saying? David, what is she saying? Shut up, Chad, David whispered, staring at me. He didn't understand the words. He understood the energy. The power in the room had shifted. It was no longer at the head of the table. It was with me. I gestured to the screen behind me. This is the true proposal, I continued in the dialect. It honors the pacifist clause. It preserves the Kyoto laboratory as a heritage site of innovation. It suggests a joint venture for medical optics, not military application. It brings profit, yes, but it brings honor first. I turned to the delegation. Do not wish to be a meteor. We wish to be the soil in which your garden grows larger. Tanaka stepped forward. He walked past Chad as if he were a piece of furniture. He came to stand in front of me. He looked at the screen. He read the Japanese text. He saw the respect for his father's legacy woven into every clause. Who wrote this? He asked in English, his voice thick with emotion. I did, I said, 3 days ago, when I realized the path we were on. Tanaka turned to David. Mr. CEO, Tanaka said, his voice cold as ice. Your vice president offered me money and insults. Your secretary offered me a future. David swallowed hard. He looked at Chad, who was sweating profusely. Tanaka-san, David stammered. I didn't know. Ignorance is not an excuse for leadership, Tanaka snapped. Then the chairman did something unprecedented. He bowed to me, deeply. A full 45 degrees. Do not sign with children, Tanaka said, gesturing back at Chad. And we do not sign with men who are deaf to their own advisors. He paused, letting the silence hang. We will sign, Tanaka